The seriousness of this current moment cannot be overstated. It is for the first time in the 70 years history of our UN membership that Romania requests an urgent meeting of the Security Council on a matter that involves us directly. Now, our history was not without challenges, especially as I have heard here in the room mentions of who understands the Russian Federation. I would say that the eastern part of Europe, we do have our share of understanding it. And although our history has not been without challenges, we have not called on the UN Security Council until today. We have increased in the 3 decades that have passed 10 times our economy. We have managed to also be a security partner for the region. And we want to see this into the future. But we do understand now more than we have done before that in order for this to happen, in order for this to be without risk, we do need to do everything that is within our responsibility, individually and collectively, to help stop the war at our border and to find a diplomatic pathway in that direction. We have a joint responsibility not just to draw a line, but to make sure we do not move that line, as people would want sometime. It is imperative for the Council to address such unnecessary escalation by the Russian Federation in its war of aggression against Ukraine. The Security Council is the most powerful tool of the international community, a common tool that we have to prevent the perception of a normalization of the abuse. We can and should not move the line we have drawn. We should not consider these current escalations as the new normal. On the night of 28 to 29th of May, a Russian drone carrying explosives violated the Romanian airspace at 2 a.m. Our military analysis shows that this drone was initially part of a swarm of drones used in an overnight attack against Ukrainian civilian infrastructure on the Danube, and traveled for 4 minutes within our territory and eventually crashed on the 10th floor of a residential apartment building in the city of Galati, Romania. What makes it different this time, though, is that it is the first time since the start of the war of aggression against Ukraine that Romanian citizens also require medical care and that Romanian property has been significantly damaged. A mother and child were injured and required medical care, but now are out of risk. Romania firmly condemns this reckless behavior and repeated illegal intrusion by Russian vehicles into our sovereign territory. Irrespective of what was their initial destination, the gravity of the action and the responsibility of the perpetrator are clear. The risk further undermines peace and security in Europe and, through its wider implications, represents a concern for the entire UN membership. Madam President, our military analysis shows without a doubt that the drone that crashed on Thursday night in Galati is a Geran 2 of Russian origin. This undeniable conclusion is backed by clear findings of a technical report issued by our special investigators and presented to the public by our President, on the basis of a consistent set of technical evidence. Apart from an inscription in Cyrillic characters of the name Geran 2 from the recovered fragments, the report conclusively established that the electronic components, navigation systems, control modules, engine, construction elements show similarities to those of other Geran 2 drones previously recovered in Romania and identified as being manufactured in the Russian Federation. The report also shows manufacturing markings, technical inscriptions, construction features and materials used follow the same technological process. The chemical analysis points to the same origin. Madam President, reckless violation by Russian drones of the airspace of Romania and of other Central and European partners have occurred repeatedly since the outbreak of the war against Ukraine. This Council also met after such incidents. This most recent incident is an extremely unsettling reality, as it shows an increasing pattern of indiscriminate drone strikes injuring civilians across the border. We reiterate our support for a full, immediate and unconditional ceasefire and the pursuit of a comprehensive, just and lasting peace in Ukraine, in line with the UN Charter and international law, and in full observance of the principles of sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity within internationally recognized borders. We have said it before in this Council, and we will repeat it once again today. Robust and workable security guarantees for Ukraine are essential for a credible peace in face of an aggressor with a historical record of relapsing into breaches of international law. This reckless behavior and blatant disregard of human suffering not only goes against the UN Charter and international law, including international humanitarian law, but it also intentionally disregards the diplomatic effort led by those that wanted to bring us closer to peace. We are time and again confronted with a staggering paradox. We seek accountability in this Council, where the Russian Federation, a permanent member who should ensure the full respect of the UN Charter and international law, is also the aggressor. Such impunity in a blatant deviation of the fundamental principles and purposes of the UN Charter goes against the core mission of this organization, maintaining international peace and security through good faith cooperation among member states. As several members in this Council have emphasized before us, this type of escalatory behavior represents a concrete challenge to international peace and security and should be condemned as such.
We will continue to ensure that the EU is better equipped to act and deal in a coordinated way with a 360 approach. Colleagues, Russia's continuing serious violations of European airspace only reinforce our resolve to support Ukraine and its people in their defense against Russia's war of aggression and their pursuit of a comprehensive, just and lasting peace in accordance with international law, including the Charter of the United Nations. In this regard, we must all further raise the cost for Moscow to end this war. President, let us not forget that Friday's incident happened on the back of several meetings of this Security Council, where the large majority of members spoke out clearly in favor of a full, unconditional and immediate ceasefire. So did Ukraine. The EU actively supports all diplomatic efforts to this end, and we once again call on all members of this Council to work with us in pressuring Russia's leadership to accept a ceasefire and to finally engage in good faith.
Madam President, today once again we heard nothing new from the Russian representative. Unfortunately, he continues to sing the same old song, repeating the familiar narrative that it was not Russia, not a Russian drone, and relying on the well-worn patterns of denial and distortion. I believe there is no one in this chamber who would retain a single shred of trust in the words of Mr. Nebenza. Ukraine has full confidence in credible conclusions of the Romanian authorities that this was indeed a Russian drone and nothing else. Russia can throw all these conspiracy theories that we just heard into a waste basket. Mr. President, what happened in Romania was not a single instance and must be taken seriously. Beyond the official rhetoric of Russia, a pattern of alarming, systematic threats has become unmistakable. Dmitry Medvedev, former president, he used on multiple occasions similar explicit threats, suggesting potential attacks on European cities. Taking together, all these statements are not isolated provocations, but part of a broader campaign in which the language of intimidation and the targeting of European capitals has been steadily mainstream into Russia's state-aligned messaging. In Galati, in Romania, we have witnessed that all this rhetoric is not just threats. Madam President, the recent attack against Romania was a cynical double strike, which carried at least two messages. The first was directed at Romania and all NATO member states. It was yet another attempt to test the resolve of our neighbors, to probe reactions and to see how far Russia can go in bringing its war of aggression ever closer to the territory of allied nations. But there was another second message. The Romanian city of Galati plays a special role in Ukrainian history as well.
Jelajahi cara baru mendapatkan informasi. Download MetroTV Extend sekarang.